The disgraced former president, Donald Trump, rang in the new year by accusing Liz Cheney of deleting and destroying evidence from the January 6th committee in an act of supposed extreme sabotage against him. He posted, "Why did American disaster Liz Cheney, who suffers from TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, and was defeated for Congress by the largest margin for a sitting congressman or congresswoman in the history of our country, illegally and delete and destroy most of the evidence and related claims from the January 6th committee of political thugs and misfits?" He wrote, "The act of extreme sabotage makes it impossible for my lawyers to properly prepare for and present a proper defense of their client, me. All of the information on crazy Nancy Pelosi turning down 10,000 soldiers that I ordered to guard the Capitol building and beyond is gone." Well, this is just garbage, as you know. He's just made it all up. None of this is true. As you know, Donald Trump allowed the insurrection and the riot at the Capitol to go on whilst he watched it on television, but he also made no provisions for a National Guard. In fact, video surfaced after the event of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer desperately trying to rally the National Guard because Donald Trump had made it increasingly difficult. And of course, there was diktat that was published saying that the National Guard or any kind of additional support police officers for January 6th was not required after or during Donald Trump's rally that he held just in front of the U.S. Capitol, where he then claims to go to the Capitol, fight like hell, and if you don't fight, we're not going to have a country left, and I'm going to go with you, which of course he didn't do. And so to try and rewrite history at this stage and claim that, that Liz Cheney has hidden evidence or any of this stuff, for those of us who live in reality, we know it's simply untrue. It has no value. But unfortunately, the people that are listening to him, the people that are watching and reading and digesting this stuff live in the Donald Trump ecosystem, the echo chamber. And they don't get news from independent journalists or from even the mainstream media. And so as far as they're concerned, if he says it, it must be true. And that is what he is working towards, the fact that he can convince people of facts based on the fact that he says it, this kind of messiah complex that makes him think that if he says something out loud, it becomes factual and becomes part of the historical narrative. And sadly, we are living in a post-truth world. But I also want to kind of think more, and in this analysis and future analysis, I want to think more about the fact that Donald Trump didn't do this alone. And the insurrection, which in my view is still ongoing, because of course he continues to claim that the election was stolen, and so do his surrogates. The fact that, he was impeached for this, and it was not ratified in the Senate by the Republicans. And to me, all of this could have gone away if the Republicans had ratified his first impeachment when he tried to extort Ukraine on the telephone with Volodymyr Zelensky. And all of these kind of problems that we are having to navigate now, and even the GOP is having to navigate, because of course many of the GOP candidates and lawmakers and senior Republican people, they don't like Trump. In fact they hate him. But he's popular, and they need a popular candidate. And as we know, the other candidates, from Nikki Haley through Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie, they don't even come close in polling. So, they're stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea. They've got this guy who they hate, who's a liability, who's a rapist and a fraudster, and yet he is popular with the Republican audience. Not all of it, but enough of it to mean that they have to keep their mouths shut and just run with it. He also has compromat on them. Anybody that crosses him, he will publicly humiliate. That means that they will potentially lose their job or lose re-election. And so, this kind of emotional blackmail and this professional blackmail is going on, and it makes it very difficult for the GOP. I don't have sympathy with the GOP because they brought this upon themselves. And I want us in future analysis to think about all of the Republican candidates and the Republican lawmakers who are seeking re-election and their complicity in this, not just the insurrection, but enabling Donald Trump, a fascist, an extremist, and a dictator. Not a wannabe dictator, but an already dictator. This guy dictated for 4 years. He banned Muslims from entering the US. He arrested people for peacefully protesting. His dictatorship was very clear during those 4 years in office from January 2017, around the same time that I moved with my family to the United States. So that was my first experience. And I don't want us to forget all of the lawmakers who are continually complicit in his rise, in the fact that, nobody is standing up and saying anything against him. The only people that are Liz Cheney, who he is now criticizing and claiming is hiding evidence, and Adam Kinzinger, who is not seeking re-election. And this is the situation we find ourselves in, is that, one man has brainwashed an entire political movement. And I believe in conservatism for people that choose that. I believe that there should be a solid opposition to a progressive and liberal movement. Of course there should. You don't just want a one-party state. But when the party of conservatism has been so corrupted by a pig, then we find ourselves in a very different situation. Because actually the Democrats look far more like traditional conservatives and Republicans. They want to preserve the republic for a start. They care about democracy and freedom and all of the things that the republic stands for. And Republicans don't. In fact, senior Republicans are claiming that the US is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. They misunderstand the definition and the terms. And democracy is important, but until you lose it, you may not really know quite how it affects you. And the reality is that if you want to vote, if you want to be able to vote somebody out and somebody in under Donald Trump's future tenure, you would not be able to do that. Because I have absolutely no doubt that he will remove that ability to have him removed from office. He will want to stay in there till his dying day, or pass the baton to one of his family members, potentially. So, this is what we're looking at. And then finally, I want to mention Mitch McConnell, a man who looks like he's been abducted by aliens from the inside. He also has been complicit. After the January 6th insurrection, he came out and criticized Donald Trump directly and blamed him directly for the events of that day. And he has since changed his mind. He has since being very selective with his language. And, Mike Johnson, who is the new Speaker of the House, who was also complicit with the insurrection of January 6th, are very much part of that movement, that far-right Christian nationalist movement to keep Donald Trump in office at whatever cost. And of course, he is therefore compromised. And these are very senior people in the GOP. And so, Trump can't do this by himself, but it's not just that. If Donald Trump was to not be the candidate because, I don't know, something happens between now and November next year, or this year, November 2024, if something happens to him, whether it be incarceration or whether it be a heart attack or who knows, the next Republican candidate will be as fascistic as Donald Trump. All of these policies that seem to play well with the base, they will continue. And everybody we've seen, from DeSantis through Vivek Ramaswamy and everybody in between, they are all advocating for the same extremist policies that Donald Trump is advocating for. So I just want us to think about the fact that the problem is not just Trump. The problem is everywhere. The problem is in the judiciary, these extremist and far-right Christian nationalist candidates that became judges, whether it be in the Supreme Court or in more local courts. Donald Trump has infiltrated the justice system with people that share his views. The senior Republican people share his views. It's not just Trump. If anything, Trump is the least of America's problems because the Republican Party has been sullied by his tenure, but the noise that he makes, and by repeating these phrases and being so abusive towards anybody and everybody that crosses him, Donald Trump has now effectively impregnated that attitude into the mindset of Republicans, not just the leadership and the lawmakers, but many of the voters too. I'm Anthony Davis. You can hear me every day on the 5 Minute News podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered with Ron Filipkowski, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Thanks so much for watching. We're only a few subscribers short of 2 million subs. Please subscribe right now to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel for free and help us grow this unapologetically pro-democracy network.